Hello, everybody. Welcome to Untapped. This is episode 4. It's just the three of us today. We're excited to catch up on a lot of things and discuss some hot topics. We appreciate the feedback we've been getting from everybody. We're real excited for what's ahead. Thanks for being patient with us as we use Zoom while Levi's in Florida. He's going to be back soon, and we'll switch into an in-studio podcast, which is going to even be better than it already is. And it's already fire. We're off to a better start than expected. And we're really grateful for last week's guest, Nico Price. And just can't wait for what's next again. I said it 3 times, so I guess I'm pretty excited about this. So
Hell yeah. I'm gonna
what's
be back
new,
in
fellas?
2 weeks. 2 weeks I'll be back.
Let's
Finally.
go.
I'm flying in the Friday, so Thanksgiving's Thursday. I'm flying in Friday morning. So I'll be
Heck,
sick.
man, I
Perfect.
can't wait. Get a little more light on.
Um,
What do you
wait,
guys
wait,
got?
Kyle. I was gonna say, wait, Kyle, you're always talking about this feedback. What's the feedback so far? I need to know this.
Yeah, the feedback. So let's see. We've had a lot of people that have been fired up about us and about the guests ahead. Just saying good comments. Tim Welch has been one of our biggest supporters. He's been real excited about the pod. He wants to bring us on as soon as Levi gets back onto the Red Hawk recap. So I consider that a huge. I consider that uh, a sign that we're moving in the right direction for sure. I was in Tim and Sean. They've been getting so much just popularity. I think from Sugar's fight. I think it's almost been overwhelming in some ways. Just kind of sitting back and watching from just where we are in the shop in our complex, the same complex that Logan Paul came on and said was like an enchanted haunted house. We've had people waiting in the front there to see Sugar like for hours, just kind of camping out to try to get
Wow.
an autograph. So Sugar and Tim are getting overwhelmed with stuff, and they're just growing so rapidly. So the fact that Tim is paying attention to us with everything that's going on and saying, "Hey, we're doing a good job." People have been real excited about what we're doing in our community. Um, we've received, I think, if uh, on YouTube. I think we're off to a good start considering we haven't really advertised anything. Instagram, well, I don't think we tapped on to TikTok yet. We're still working on that, but I don't know. Maybe it's me. I
Yeah.
when I'm really tapped into it, but I think everybody I've talked to is pretty excited about it. We've had some requests of guests to be on it. Tim and Sugar, we're getting so much popularity with their podcast. That's kind of where I was going with that. That there was a guy that was gonna be on one of their shows that Tim kind of connected with. His name's Nick, and he's from Canada, and he has a pretty good following up in Canada. He's a Alberta area. He's a stand-up comic, and he's got a podcast about 150 episodes in. He's had some pretty good guests on there. He's had Chewy from Jiu Jitsu and some UFC guys, and a lot of. I think he's got a really exciting, kind of like the flavor of the Canadian Austin comedy scene going on there. And Tim didn't have time so much going on to end up working with him on a podcast. He recommended that I was on Nick's podcast, so we ended up doing like a 2.5 hour podcast. And Nick
Oh,
has been
damn.
our pod and telling people about it, and was I think I'm excited about that podcast when it comes out because he's a high level interviewer. He's just a really good communicator, and he gave a lot of positive feedback that were things that we're into, like kind of in that whole thread, the community of the health optimization, heading into the Untapped, where we've got 3 guys here that are representing something that's never been done before. And I'm really excited about that podcast and the fact that we're getting guests that want to go be on our podcast. We have Jimmy House upcoming. He's excited to be on our podcast, and real excited to have him on there. He's a guy that's black belt in jiu-jitsu. He was a few years ago. He's one of the top guys in the, I think, the heavyweight division, top 10 for ADCC, and he's a world top power lifter, and he's being recruited by the WWE right now. He's been on a lot of high level podcasts like the Mark Bell's podcast and things like that. Great communicator. Really excited to have him on the pod as well.
Jimmy, how old is Jimmy? Like 26?
I think that's right. Yeah.
that's like for him to be like as educated and stuff as he is, and like successful and kind of on this trajectory at 26. That's like impressive because you don't see that very often.
Just to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu at 26, that's crazy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And plus he's like he's a black belt in that, but a black belt in the powerlifting stuff too. I follow a lot of his stuff on the with like the strength stuff, and he's creative too, and you can see that he's like in it, he's doing it, and then he's making like new exercises, trying new things all the time. He's always posting like new exercises and stuff. I really like it.
Oh, me too. We've got we run our business, the Recharge Center, in the same complex where Soul Fighters is. I think I've mentioned on this podcast before. And our business has been doing really well too. We did the fight prep for Sugar Sean's last three fight camps. We did his meal prep work with Dan Garner Nutrition. And we've got a guy, one of our first clients, his name's Logan Knott. He's one of Jimmy's good friends, and he's just been an awesome guy to develop with, and kind of keeps me up to date on what's going on with Jimmy. And his personal training and his exercise, like you're saying, is that whole aspect of him is really growing. I think, like you said, he's into a lot of exciting new things. Logan has shared with me and directed me to some of his YouTube videos. I recommend checking out some of those things because he's really in tune with what the latest that's happening. The knees over toes guys brought like a small element of things that haven't been done that need to be done, I think, in exercise. And it's really cool to see him working with bands a lot. He does a lot of, I see a lot of stuff that Levi does. He's kind of like when you say you're kind of experimenting a lot, being creative, developing new, staying ahead of the trends. I think that's important as an athlete. If everybody's doing the same kind of workout, then you don't have an advantage. But if you can stay creative and tap into things that other people aren't doing, I think that gives you a leg up.
Right. Yeah. Like there's a base to strength conditioning, I think, that kind of everybody has a knowledge of, or the majority of people in sports have that. They can kind of wrap their head around it, but then they never unlearn that to try and learn new things. They just, this is the base, we bench, squat, deadlift, and this is what we do. And okay, what else? How do, and a lot of guys that they train their whole programs around those three exercises. And it's like, if that's what you want to be good at, then, great. But like, that's not for a human performance and for like longevity of health and stuff. There's so many other things out there that you need to be tackling. And I think that he has his head wrapped around that whole philosophy that there's, working out is just like jujitsu. There's always going to be new moves, and there's always going to be, the black belts 10 years ago are not as good as the black belts today, just because there's new stuff out there. They know that, the new moves. It's a evolution of constantly evolving in each like strength conditioning or jujitsu. It's the same thing. Just the longer that it progresses, there's going to be more knowledge. And if you're not up to date on that, you're going to trick some people, but eventually your stuff is going to be so outdated that, people are going to go elsewhere because there's going to be better stuff out there.
Man, that's so true. Yeah, I just keep getting reminded. I was just at the park over here with the boys, and each guy is into a different sport. Got the 16-year-old into wrestling right now. The 13-year-old is getting ready for football tryouts, and then the 12-year-old's playing indoor soccer. So we're out at the field, kind of doing little drills, and they want, trying to work on different levels of their game. And while we were there was a dad with a kid. He was probably about 13 years old, and then the mom was there, and maybe a little kid that was 6. And for about 15 minutes, as we were drilling, we were just cringing and just gutted because this dad was just berating the son. Just the kid didn't look like he'd worked out much. He was struggling with running and stuff, and the dad was calling him a loser, calling him stupid. Kind of, you got to get moving. And I'm taking your shoes back. We're taking him, take off your shoes right now. I made him take his shoes off, and they, gave him to the mom, said, we're going to return him right now. I mean, the kid just killing him. And we at one point, man, I was just wanted to go over there and, confront
Right.
this guy. But there's unfortunately, there's just so many dads and, out there, and coaches and trainers out there that are kind of in that mentality. Got a closer look at them, and that, no offense to somebody who's overweight, there's different elements of being in shape. The guy's about 67 pounds overweight, didn't look like he had any muscle on his body, didn't look like he ever worked out, and
Right.
just a real negative guy. I mean, if I went over there and single legged him, I'd be out in 20 seconds, and I was real tempted to do it, but you know what good is that going to do? And that kind of thing. But it really stuck to me is that, man, when I'm going to be following something, if I'm going to learn something new in exercise, I'm going to be following a guy who looks good. I want to follow a guy who is in better shape than me, is doing things that I can't do myself, the level that I want to get to. And that's what's awesome about exercise, just like jujitsu, is like you're saying, is that it's always evolving, it's always growing, it's always changing. There's always somebody out there doing an element of exercise that you're not going to be a master at. And I look up to guys like Levi, Dana. Dana's we haven't heard much about Dana. This guy's a pretty high level exercise guy himself. When you talk to him and Dana takes his shirt off and he's just freaking shredded, or you go roll with him and the guy's actually, you haven't rolled with Danny yet, Levi. You got to get a roll. And this guy reminds me of Bebo. He rolls like Bebo does.
Oh, really?
Gym are really, really you just love the guy. And he's just like kind of like Dana, really charismatic, but man, he doesn't let back. He just goes for it all the time, 100%. But I guess I'm just saying, like, I just find that that's so important, that you want to have some tough love in there, but you want to have a good level of love and optimism in it. And if you're a trainer, you're a coach, and you're not representing yourself, you should probably, be a little bit more chill about that stuff, and be more in the learning mode with somebody and working together with them and trying to understand.
Right. I think, like, going back to the story with the dad or whatever, it kind of like, it's no surprise that somebody that's probably not living a healthy lifestyle and obviously frustrated at something, like he's taking it out on, you know, his everyday problems are coming out on his kid, which is, sad. But um and then going off the health stuff, if you're not like, if you're not living it, the stuff is the stuff, and that's it, really. It doesn't, progress from there. You have to be in the weight room or in the gym or whatever category that you're down. You got to be in there living that, like, pretty much 24/7 to keep up with the top of the top. If you want to just be like an average strength coach or an average jiu-jitsu guy or an average athlete, then you can train average, you're going to get out what you put in. So
It's so true. I see so many trainers out there too. Maybe they got the book knowledge and they're paying attention to a lot of YouTube and stuff, but you look at them and, like, he's in okay shape, but he's kind of an average shape. And there's a big
right.
difference between a trainer of that level and somebody that's in phenomenal shape. That's what the person's about, and that's their career. I want that guy that's in phenomenal shape. I think when we got a lot of young fighters, and there's a lot of young athletes that are in our community, and when you're looking for a trainer, a coach, I think that's probably the best first thing to look at is, what is this, no, not necessarily, what does this guy look like? Maybe the guy is a little bit overweight, but he's just a strength master. He can squat 700 pounds or something, and you want to get your strength up. So, hey, I want to learn how to squat 700 pounds or get my strength up. Well, that's the guy. You don't necessarily have to have a six pack, but if I want to be a top level athlete, that guy better be a little bit element of shredded, a little bit element of good performance in the gym, and that kind of thing.
Right. To me, at some point you have to, baseball's they're following a little bit of a different, I don't know, they go at it from a little bit different philosophy. But for me, if I'm going to fully respect the opinion that's coming in as an athlete, to me, you've had to been in that realm, a little bit. You've had to at least play it, or um, you have to be like obsessed with the sport. If you haven't played, you have to be like a geek on this certain topic for me
100%.
to almost respect okay, you're gonna come at me with this information, and you've never played or you never looked at the sport. I'm probably not going to take it too serious. But vice versa, coming from somebody that's super successful in the sport, um, and you can tell there's some wisdom behind what they're saying, then that's something that you want to tap into and not miss a second of information.
Man, I agree with that. That's so good. You know what? I keep looking at Dana's hat over here and how cool he looks today, man. And I already said we were off camera, but man, those glasses that Levi's sporting, man, that's a cool look right there. Is that a Florida vibe right there? I think that's a Florida vibe.
Yeah, it's a something vibe. I don't know.
I don't think it's as cool as the jersey he's got on, Kyle.
All right,
That's what
Bulls.
I'm saying. Chicago represent. Yeah.
This, Kyle, I was telling him, I don't know, if, like this is 45 Jordan, so I think he wore it one time after he went and played baseball for like a year. I'm sure you know, went and played baseball for like a year. His first game back was 45, so that's this jersey.
That was good. That was an interesting branding and marketing move by him because he was able to move, I think, from that a lot more jersey. I think didn't Kobe do that at one point from number 8 to 23?
Yeah,
To
I think Kobe had
24.
a smart
Yeah.
move. That was a good move. Man, growing up watching basketball to me was, and I know I've talked pretty deep in depth with Levi about this, but watching basketball, I go way back. I'm an older dude, so like I was watching basketballs in the 80s. I was back there with the tail end of Magic Showtime, and I was right on the heart of the Jordan days. And back in the day, we didn't have YouTube or nothing. It was TV, and there was a station, WGN. I'm sure Dana knows about that. And
Yes,
they
sir.
broadcasted. It was at that time. It was hard to watch basketball games. TNT was kind of new, and they weren't really pushing basketball games. You had to wait till Saturday and Sunday to watch games on the network. And in your own town, you had to listen to the games on the radios because they black them out so that people would go to the games. But for some reason, I don't know what they did in Chicago, but WGN played all of Chicago's games even before Jordan got there. So it was just amazing to watch, always watch all the Jordan games. And I just remember going in the backyard and just practicing his like up and under moves and things he was doing over and over again. But it was so cool to see. I felt like basketball at that time, it reflected, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of creativity, a lot of things that had never been seen or done before. And I feel like UFC is that sport right now. Basketball, I still got love for, don't get me wrong. And I know that you got people that will argue with me to the end, but the game's changed to me. It's a completely different basketball game now. And what was happening in the late 80s and 90s with Jordan's peak, my favorite player ever, UFC is like that to me right now.
Yeah, I was
Almost
thinking
like
that while you said that.
almost like a carefree, like this is what it is. We're just going to do it, and we're not afraid to offend anyone. This is how we do things.
Yeah, I saw Dana White's press conference, and they were saying, I don't know if you watched that too, Kyle, and that's kind of where you're getting it from. Because, yeah, he was saying just like how much it's skyrocketed, like the numbers and stuff like that. Like they've outsold MSG twice now, or
Twice,
I mean,
yeah.
or they have the highest grossing sales in MSG history. Like that's insane to think about. So
Yeah.
Off the topic a little bit, but the did you catch the heavyweight guy asking Dana White questions?
Yeah. Yeah, and he was like, "What the hell?" He was like, "How does this guy still have a microphone?"
no, what did he say?
Some
You got
dude
to
was
go listen
drilling
to.
the question. Yeah.
He was relentless, man. He was rattling Dana a little bit, and he was an interesting character. I don't know if Dana will want him back again, but I think now he's built up a fan base just from that interview. Everybody, if you look at the comments, everyone's like, that heavyweight guy.
No, I haven't seen it.
Crazy. He was wild. He was just pushing Dana, asking crazy questions, but he had a lot of confidence behind it.
You guys got to tell me about the
Yeah.
fights because I didn't get to see Adesanya and Pereira. So.
We were all three of us were. I didn't know if Levi would be up. Levi likes to go to bed earlier. He's such a good motivator to my boys. Actually, they they know that Levi goes to bed earlier, and so we've talked a lot about sleep. They're into the Whoop stats. I don't know how that happened. I'm such an exercise nerd. I couldn't be more proud now that my boys are like into the Whoop stats of analyzing HRV, heart rate variability, how the body responds to exercise and rest and heart rate and sleep quality, deep sleep, REM. So we're starting to have discussions about that. And they know Levi goes to bed early, so they've been kind of doing that too. And man, I love that because especially at that that age, it's so important. And man, I lost my train of thought here, damn it.
Building off of that,
Let's go with that.
last night I was
Oh
up.
yeah,
Oh,
fights. We
yeah,
were all
yeah.
talking about them.
The
We were all
sleep.
talking about the fights, and Levi was awake. I couldn't believe it. Levi was. What time you have to see, watch that fight, man?
Well, we went to a wedding last night, and me being who I am, I was driving, so we stayed, and then I drove everybody home, and then we stayed and stayed up, and we were like, we're already up, so we might as well watch these last couple fights. So then we watched it. It was that card was crazy exciting. Like when I looked at the card, I'm like, yeah, this is a solid card, but because I didn't know anyone, like it's just different when you know somebody on the card that you're more excited about it. Um, so I thought, this is a good card, but like not crazy. But performances and all the excitement that happened was like maybe one of the best cards of the year. Like
Yeah.
definitely one of them, but maybe the top card of the year.
Oh, yeah. That Chandler, I mean, you look at the Chandler Poirier fight alone. That was like that was just a crazy fight. Chandler kind of reminds me, he's got that heart kind of like I feel like you got, Levi, where if you're gonna hit this guy, you better almost kill this guy if you're gonna take him out.
Yeah, he's going relentless. He's just all or nothing, like on the gas the whole time, throwing like every punch is to kill. Like every punch it's coming from I want to knock you out,
I love it.
And
I
and
love his style.
Poirier even said like if he would have thrown straighter punches, then he would have probably got me out of there. But because he throws looping punches, I was able to, stay out of the way.
I thought it was crazy. Like
But
Chandler took down Poirier, and it was crazy because it was like, oh shoot, he's got his back, and Poirier was just staying calm right there. And I heard Tim say that it's hard. I was reminded when you do have the seatbelt and your guy's really sweaty, you don't think about those things. It's really hard to hold somebody there. And Poirier was just staying calm. He had one knee up in a defensive position and was able to spin and then work his jiu-jitsu from there. I thought that was a really cool moment in the fight.
yeah, it was interesting too because that's where Poirier has been submitted. Both times he's lost the fighting for the belt he's been submitted that way, somebody on his back. And so you could almost I could almost see like the oh shit, here we go again in it, but then he stayed calm and got out of it, so it was impressive.
That's that thing. It's so amazing. We watch Sugar and Tim work on that all the time. Is that whole element of just keeping your breath under control, keeping that almost stoicism discipline when you're in the middle of the just thousands of screaming fans. You're in a fight almost to the death. You're taking punishment, giving punishment. How do you just stay calm when you're in that kind of pressure? That's just such a skill that I admire.
I was explaining this to somebody yesterday. Like the way I almost look at it when you're across from somebody is like I'm almost fighting like this shadow. Like I don't even think of it like you're going against a person. It's like I'm fighting this almost like shadow in front of me, and I try to keep it like there's no like person to person, no like feelings involved. It's like you're almost fighting this mannequin. You know what I mean? That's the way I wrap for me at least.
I like that. Like Nico Price was saying that fighting is emotion, and I was thinking a lot about that this week. How fighting is emotion, and so is you parallel that to life. If you're battling things in your own life, it's emotion. If you're fighting against challenges, you're fighting against things that are trying to beat you down in your life. That's an emotion there, and so you got to learn to navigate. How can you stay calm in those times? What do you do to when you're in that place that it's like that untapped thing? If how can you find peace in those situations and stay calm with those emotions? I love that whole principle.
Yeah, I watched Canelo versus Plant today, and I rewatched the whole fight. And before, like when they're talking, Canelo's looking down. He's not even looking, almost to like I don't want that personal. That's what I thought is like I don't think he's looking down because he doesn't even want that personal connection. He's going out there to war, and he's almost fighting himself in there, not fighting the other guy as much.
Man, that's beautiful. I was wondering too, Mr. Dana. Last night I wanted to ask you, man, what music are you working on? I know I could feel I didn't want to mess with you too much because I could feel you were in the zone last night.
Dude, I was on like it's funny like getting the Zoom just like completely Zoom Pro or whatever like changed me because me and my partner Goose worked on Zoom for like 5 hours yesterday. And it's like I haven't like worked that long on a session or just in general, just like any like hard work. I mean, other than my job, but like for like 5 hours, 6 hours straight, I'm like, by the end, you're like just mentally exhausted and stuff like that. But there was something about just wanting to like keep on going. And so that's what happened was my dad texted me, he said he wasn't going to be able to watch the fights. My pops buys the fights, so I usually just watch them that way. But
Yeah.
and yeah, he said he wasn't getting the fight, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna just like keep it going. So I probably worked for like 10 hours yesterday or something like that. And it wasn't that I was working on anything special. It was just like, let's see how far I can kind of push it. Let's see how far I can go without like my brain turning into scrambled eggs. So that was
Right.
it. Yeah. I wanted to watch the fights. I just watched like clips. It's just been a long time since like I took a Saturday night just to like do nothing. So well, do nothing but music, that is. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you're doing that kind of work, that's a lot of time investment. I mean, when I look being on the screen, that's a whole discipline itself. What do you do to stay in that zone? Do you work on your breath work? Do you get up, move around? Did you get in a mode? Did you exercise before or after that, or did you just kind of put all your energy for the day into that?
I went to a concert on Friday night, so that really helped kind of like inspire the idea of just like, hey, let me get in here and grind. Because this guy I saw, he had like a whole like 20, 30 dates booked for his tour, and they all ended up getting canceled. So he could only do three shows, and it was like I just kept thinking about like, damn, he put in the work for 30 shows, and then all of a sudden he's doing three. I'm like, that's just what it takes. Like, you gotta be putting in the work, and it still might not work out, but I'm sure he did at one point. So just inspired off the back of that. It was like I didn't have to do anything really. I just had the motivation to like sit down and work because I saw somebody else at the top level, who put in all this work, and that kind of just trickled down to me where it was just like I typically I would take a break and go to the gym. I would do just all these breath work, meditation, whatever it may be, just like throughout the day. But for some reason I just like had a different kind of like motivation to just like keep going and grind through all of that without having to stop. So I wouldn't recommend it. It just is like sometimes when you don't like take when you haven't done that in a while, it's like if it just feels really good to do it. So um yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
I think it's easy to do that when you're like passionate about something. Like it's almost
Definitely.
timeless when you're in somewhere where you're passionate. It's like time's not even a thing. I don't like a lot of times when I'm working out or stuff. I don't. I if we'd been in there for 6 hours or an hour, I don't know the difference. It's just like we're working until we're finished. I don't really care how long it takes.
Yeah. When dude, it's funny mentioning Jimmy House. That's how I knew about him when I first moved up to Glendale. Like I came back from Chicago, or I went to ASU, went home to Chicago, and then I came up here. And I didn't know anything about this area, so I got a gym membership. Of course, first thing you'll do, and because it's like, what else am I gonna do? I don't know anybody. And Jimmy was like the first person I saw there. And then he would come with like a whole squad of people, and he would be there for hours and hours. If not do two sessions. One day I'd go at like 8 in the morning, I'd see him. One day I'd go at like 10 at night, I'd see him. So it was like not in the same day, just like random days. And with a guy like that, they're going at like the same time all the time. So you got to know that
Right.
they're probably in there twice a day at that point.
Yeah.
And dude, I mean, he's built like a brick shit house. Like he's just
Massive.
huge. Yeah, and he was moving massive weight. He'd have 15 people watching him while he was doing it, all friends of his. So yeah, that was pretty sick back then. And I
That's
didn't know he
Yeah.
was this crazy MMA guy either.
Yeah. I think it's hard to be in the gym for less than an hour. I tr I've been like going and working out and trying to keep it like right around an hour, like no more than an hour 30, just from a like a taxing standpoint. But it's hard. Like for me, it's so hard to be under like an hour 10. It's almost like if I'm less than an hour, I feel like I didn't do anything. But I think that's just because it's almost like a jungle gym for me. Like I'm like a little kid in there running around a jungle gym, like, holy shit, I love all this stuff, and my mind is just like, I'm really like, I feel like that's probably the spot where I'm the most creative. So it's just, there's endless possibilities in there for me.
There's all these studies I read that are popping up lately that, it's the 40-minute max workout, and they're measuring all these things and the science behind it, the testosterone, and where peak and how do your workouts go and everything like that. And I always think back to Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was, I think he told the story in one of his books where I think he was 20 years old or so, and where he was, it's Austria, I think. He From 18 to 21 or something, you got to be in the military. You're just every guy goes into the military for that time. So he's in the military, and he would, you're on base and you got to be there, and he'd sneak out the window and go to bodybuilding competitions, or sneak out the window and work out in the gym more. So he got caught one time after he won a bodybuilding competition, and the military superiors said, all right, you want to work out, we're going to have you work out then. So the military is going to be behind this if you're going to be like a world champion bodybuilder. So they would literally, that was his new job. They put him in the gym, start him at like 6 in the morning, and he would work out all day long, like, from six in the morning to 4 in the afternoon or something. And he'd be in there lifting, and they'd be watching him. They had two guards posted where if he wasn't working out, and say, hey, get back to work or whatever. But look what that produced. That produced like a guy in the thread of Jimmy House or Levi Kelly, where they're doing things that have never been done before. Our Schwarzenegger winning all those bodybuilding titles and moving on to being the most famous action hero of all time, one of the most famous physiques ever, and then moving into the government, all those kinds of things. It's like this universal thing of, hey, you can measure science and say it's 40 minutes, but it seems like if you want to take it to that untapped level, you got to also train into that untapped level, and you ignore those little windows of science. There's an art, there's an element of grind, there's an element of pushing past the limits that cannot be measured.
Right. For me, I think especially like early on when you first start training, the more you can be in there, the better, because there's so much to, if you want to be like a strength coach or something like that, because there's so much to learn. Just like if you want to be a pitcher, like you need to be throwing a lot because there's so much to learn at the very beginning. Or you want to be a jujitsu guy, like as a white belt, you need to be in there like every single day because there's so much to learn. Where if you're a black belt, okay, depending on the level of black belt you want to be, like you for Tim to stay sharp, he doesn't need to be rolling as much as me because he has those years and years and years of practice. Where it's going to take me, however long to even catch up to that, and then now things start changing a little bit. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely, definitely. We had a guy come from the Bay Area. Man, it seems like I got a lot of those guys doing jujitsu in the Bay Area, where the Diaz brothers were with the what is it, Roger Gracie or somebody, I always forget who it is, but which Gracie it is. But the guy comes in and he's just on another level. And I asked him, I like to ask everybody what their training's like, and no surprise that he's, for his level of blue belt, the way that his performance was, he was training twice a day, every day, kind of like the Donahart principle. And I think it's not easy to train every day. Your body gets beat up. You're going to go through stuff. You're going to wake up in the morning and it's going to hurt, you know what I mean? And you're going to be like, this sucks. And you're going to have to, going into those places of going past the limits. It's never easy, but it just seems like that kind of principle. And that there comes a limit too. I heard of a guy that was training, like he was working out 8 hours. He was working out 8 hours a day in the gym, and he was just working out, and he wasn't doing, I don't think he was doing any other principles, but he ended up in the hospital or some horrible thing happened. So
Right.
there is that limit too. You got to be smart about it. But I do think that I would always, and I think we've talked about this before, and I think it's a principle for all three of us, like Dana, I mean, saying working 10 hours a day doing music production, that's some pretty intense type of work there. I think of writers, they don't even write for that long. That's a whole thing. But the top in that level, they're pushing those limits. They're putting 10 hours into something like that.
Right. And like you said, there's definitely a balance. Like you can definitely overtrain, but I would say for the majority of people, especially in today's society, that's training is the least of their worries. Um, because it takes a lot to overtrain a body. That's, it takes a lot. So, um, yeah, I would say for anybody that's just, especially like not a top level athlete, push a little bit, go. If you're going 20 minutes, go 30 just to see what 30 feels like. Now, when you go back to 20, it's not going to be as hard. So push those limits a little bit. Not every day. You don't have to do it every single day, but once a week, like, okay, today I'm going to go twice as long as I did, and change the definite. For me, I think stuff like that changes the definition of hard. Like when you're, okay, 40 minutes for me used to be hard, but now I'm doing an hour consistently. 40 minutes isn't going to be hard anymore. It just, your definition of hard changes as you can constantly rip that callus off. A stronger one grows. You rip it off again, a stronger one grows. You rip it off again, a stronger one grows. If you're never ripping the callus, your skin's going to be pretty weak.
Ooh, I like that. Man, that's beautiful stuff. I keep thinking of that dad today for some reason. We're kind of on this of pushing it past the limits in the training. And I think about if I'm in that kid situation, he probably lacks the communication skills to try to communicate. Maybe the dad's impossible to communicate with, but I was watching the mom. She was just, you could tell she was just, hopefully she's not being treated the same way, but she just had that look of just exhaustion or just like sadness and brokenheartedness of what was
Right.
happening in her family. And I wonder, what are some words of advice we can give to younger kids, or parents that they want their kids to do so well, or that the kid is just feeling overwhelmed by their parent or whatever. I kind of feel like led to what's some tips that we can give to a kid like that.
The the one tip is to, like, when you have, this is a long-term tip, but when you have kids, you have to progress. You can't, I think that's where the problem stems from, is that dad was probably treated that way and even harsher, and his dad, was the same way. So you have, at some point, you have to break the barrier. You have to unlearn what's been taught to you in the first 20 years of your life. I was listening to something that was like, your first 20 years you're learning everything your parents tell you, but your next 20 years you need to unlearn, a lot of the things, and create your own opinion, and okay, is this what I actually think, or is this what everybody else has told me to think? Um, so I think people, they do a good job at learning the first 20 years from their parents, but they don't do a very good job of unlearning and creating their own ideas. So for somebody that's being raised like that, the biggest thing that you can do is flip the script. Now you're 18, now you're 20, now you're 30, and you have a 2-3 year old kid, 4 year, whatever. You can't just revert back to the traumatic things that happened to you. You have to create this whole new, basically this whole new way of teaching, and showing the, what's the word, like showing that kid the proper way to be raised, and hopefully he beats you at that. Hopefully it's a constant, okay, everybody's getting a little bit better, and which is, ultimately, I think, the best thing for our society. I got a little bit off topic there, but whatever.
No, I agree. I'm
No,
following.
that was spot on. I would say, I mean, I agree with all of that. I would say if you're like a kid and you're really interested in sports, you know, cling on to your coaches that you have when you get them. I had really good coaches as far as baseball and football went growing up, and like they pushed me really hard too. They didn't speak to me like that because they weren't my dad. Only a dad's really gonna, get into you like that. But you know, I had, like I said, I had really good coaches that I was able to, sort of make proud in a sense, like you would your own dad. And I think by doing that, by working really hard, if you want to be in sports for your coach and for your teammates, then typically the parent follows suit and is really happy with that too, in a way. So at least that's what I saw with other kids that had pretty strict parents like that.
It's tough. Like, you don't, it's so hard. Like, you never know. I guess Kyle saw the situation. So from the outs, like, you never know. Okay. Because there's been times, like, in my childhood, that I needed that a little bit of, like, stern, like, hey, I'm not playing. Like, if you want to be great, this is what you got to do. And, it made me who I am. So a lot of times there is tough love, but then there's kind of what, the situation Kyle's talking about seems like there's some, there's some darkness in there. And especially from somebody that probably didn't play. To me, it's like, okay, did you play? Did you, do you know how hard this is? Like, you always hear like the angry friend, like, come on, man, like do this or do that. And it's like, did did you play? Do you know? This is, you think I'm trying to do this? Like, I'm trying to win just like everybody else here. So I think it probably comes from a lack of knowledge. Like the parent doesn't even know what's going on, and his way of coaching is just yelling because that's all he knows. I always say, like, a coach that if you show up to practice and it's an hour long and you're doing 40 minutes of conditioning, the chances are the coach doesn't have much to teach you. So that's why you're doing so much running.
That's true. I'm thinking of the proverb. It says, "Parents don't embitter your children." And I think that's a good one because, yeah, I'm thinking this time, I think Kai was probably he's 13 years old now, my middle boy, he was 5 years old or so. And we were playing in a parking lot, and the ball bounced, and I kept telling him, don't chase the ball into the street, don't go near the street. And he kind of edged over there, and ball bounced, and he sprinted towards the street right into, on, car was coming by fast, and I had to run over there fast as I could at the last minute, grabbed him and knocked him out of the way. And man, I knew at that time I had to do something. And you don't want to go too far and just smack him or something. That's going to be self-defeating. But I had to raise my voice. I had to get angry at him. I was, don't do that. He never, go make him feel that scaredness, that fear that he wasn't feeling about that car coming, because it was life and death situation. And in that situation, if I would have carried it on for a couple of days, just berating him, then I'm going to embitter him. I'm going to make him feel bitter. I'm going to make him feel hurt and angry and dark inside. And so I think that's a good level to have. And if you're a kid and you're just being embittered by a parent, maybe that dad is trying to, there's some dads that are kind of competitive. They don't really want their son to ever become better than them. And it's always this kind of thing. Or maybe the dad wants that kid to, is reliving. That happens a lot. They want to try to live through the kid, and that kid might be different than them. It happens a lot where the dad and the kid, they have different gifts in life. So it's, it's kind of a reminder there that the son's got to kind of be patient with the dad, and sometimes, hey dad, I love you, and I'd like some positive comments now and then, and things like that. I'm on the end of a, the optimal, the positive training. Like when you're working out, I like to hear words of encouragement and things like that, and not to be overly sugar coated either. It's like, hey, we're gonna get to work and we're gonna get in there and fight and stuff. But I think in training, especially if you're a dad, I think it's good to err on the end of being a little bit more encouraging to the son, so you avoid that embitterment. And I guess you could become embittered too if you're being coddled too much and you're not being pushed. They're going to become a spoiled sort of person, and that's embittered as well. Kind of rambling a
Right.
little bit.
I think for me, like when I was being, like, my dad was trying to, I would do something and he was trying to discipline me. Like the worst thing, but I think because I had such a respect for my dad, the worst thing was like, oh, he's disappointed. Like he's disappointed in me. And my mom was telling me, like, my dad used to say, the Kelly boys, they don't do that stuff. Like if we were doing something that wasn't acceptable, it was like, well, you're hurting the Kelly boys' name. Like we don't, that's not how we roll. So like that disappoint, I think the number one thing is like your kid almost has to respect you in a way that when you're disappointed, like he's like, oh man, I disappointed, my dad. Or for me, that was like the number one thing is like, oh, I know not to do that again because I disappointed my dad.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've heard this before, is that with kids and all people, I think we in the world today, there's a lot of focus on I guess I'm watching movies and I'm seeing TV shows, and I've heard this before, and I think it's out there, but in the media and the pop Hollywood and the shows and commercials and things, I see the father missing a lot, the father figure, the strong father, the level-headed father. You see a lot of doofus fathers out there and things like that, and how is so many are missing that father figure in their life and our culture altogether, because the father, I think a lot of times, is just being so beat down by our society, maybe because of mistakes of past fathers, of becoming overbearing, of becoming kind of abusive, of becoming too self-centered and full in themselves. And maybe, they thought it had to be this way. They thought they had to be the man and in charge, and everybody bows before them, instead of being the father that builds up, the father that loves, the father that encourages. And my belief is that we're all looking for that perfect father. And I think God is that perfect father, and we're all looking for God. He's the perfect father, and we look for that in our fathers, but there is no perfect father. But at least, if we don't have that perfect father, we're missing a father, we can look to that father in heaven. And that's always brought me a lot of peace in the situation, that if my boys don't have me, or I've made a mistake in some area, at least I can, start give them some love and direct them to a better father.
For sure. That's been huge being down here, like tapping into, you know, I guess these past 6 weeks I've went more into like Christianity and like reading the Bible and stuff with this gym out here, and just uh like, hold on one second, the dog's out here, but just kind of growing my relationship has helped like tremendously. Like, okay, I don't know the trajectory, which way it's going to go, but just kind of letting go and okay, he's going to take control in whatever path or whatever trajectory we're going to go on. I'm just going to trust that that's what was supposed to happen. And just knowing that you have somebody, more superior than you, that's in control of things that you can't really control.
I love it. I love it. I hear a lot of attacks on Christianity these days, and I think a lot of it's because uh, the stereotype, or what has been identified with the Christian label, has been definitely off base of what the Bible or who Jesus was. Is, I guess I'm speaking my beliefs, but I see a lot of very poor examples with churches, and some churches have gotten so exclusive, smaller churches, and legalistic, and other big churches has become too corporate and about money and things like that. And I think that it makes people have an idea that that's how all Christians are. But I go to the Bible. For the people who are Christians are following the Bible, and the Bible is, it's a book. For me, it's the most famous book in the world. It's probably the most talked about book. And although, like people, it's not real, or this kind of thing. But I think that I hear a lot of people commenting on the Bible, and it's kind of like, I feel like, if Dana's in high level music, and somebody's trying to comment on music, but they're pretty much a white belt in music, and they've never really even tried to compose a song before. Or Levi's playing baseball, and you get these fans, why didn't he do this? And they've never even done it before. It's kind of like, to me, the same thing. If somebody's never read the Bible or understood that, I hear a lot, there's the translations, or there's contradictions. Well, New Testament, there's two parts of the Bible. There's an Old Testament that was written in Hebrew originally, and the New Testament's written in Greek originally. And we're getting English translations in America of that version. And you can always learn that Greek language, and you're not always going to get the same in one English translation of that Greek. And I think Levi had said that a couple episodes ago, of how hard it is in the context of the Bible. But I really feel like, I guess I'm saying is that I really find a lot of value in my life and the spiritual health in the Bible. And even if somebody doesn't believe it, this is a book that has, you read Proverbs alone, it has lines and lines of what was written by King Solomon, who was one of the most wisest persons recorded in history. The story is God gave him the most wisdom of any person. And I read self-help books all the time, and I love a lot of stuff out there. There's some great authors popping up in self-help books. However, I've never read in any of this book something that wasn't already written in Proverbs in the Bible. So
Right.
I guess I'm running off on another tangent and preaching right now, but I just I get frustrated that the Bible is so misunderstood, and a person would kind of understand it and read it and then comment on it. I'd feel a lot better about that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think too, like myself, for example, getting here on Wednesdays, they break down, like we'll read a passage. So then you talk about it, and then they say like what sticks out about the passage, and then how does it relate to your life. Just looking at each thing you read in the Bible and breaking it down like that from a very like elementary level. Okay, I'm gonna read this page or this what and break it down. Okay, how does this story X, Y, and Z relate to my life? How does the principles behind what is being said in this story, whether you believe it or not, how does this relate to the challenges I face every day? And I think if you break it down like that, you're going to learn a lot regardless. And whether you believe that this is the story that the creation and Jesus came here and died for our sins and stuff like that, whether you believe that or not, you're going to get good principles out of the Bible itself. And I think that's a good place to start.
100% agree. Thoughts, Mr. Dana?
I agree. I was gonna say too, I come across that a lot in the self-help books. Like what you said, I went to Catholic school for 4 years in high school, so I did my fair share of study, and I think that you can find a lot of similarities in these self-help books, and in what you can find in the Bible as well. And I mean, you've obviously opened up my eyes to a sort of a more independent way to follow God, in a sense, and I really enjoy that. And same with Jordan, as you know, Jordan has really done that for me too. And I think my
Part of
high
God,
school did
check him out. Amazing musician. POG.
yeah, shout out Part of God, exactly. But yeah, my high school did a good job of that too, kind of like, even though it was a Catholic school, bringing in multiple religions, accepting everybody, if you're Baptist, if you're Jewish, anything like that, just bringing everybody in and kind of accepting them. Maybe other kids have other viewpoints on it. I didn't grow up, going to church and stuff like that. So I didn't really have much of a predisposition to it. And I mean, I don't know what I'm going with here, but I'm just saying, these self-help books and the Bible, for sure, they have similarities, and you can find a lot of use in them.
For me, I think the biggest thing is good versus like, let's just good. Are you good or are you evil? Let's start there. And regardless of if you believe X, Y, and Z, like I want to be around good people, and I don't want to be around evil people. And from the simplest form you can make it, that's the way I look at it. And then I'm not going to dive into my beliefs or whatever right now, but at the baseline, like good people versus evil people, and there's evil in the world, and I think we see that a lot, especially seems like the news and stuff, they love to talk about that stuff, and kind of blow it up out of proportion. Not that it's not bad, but we see a lot of the bad stuff sells for the most part, and you don't hear a lot of the good press. But I think at the most basic level, it's good versus evil, and then from there you grow your own relationship with God or whatever higher power you want to
love it,
rabbit hole you want to go down.
I love it. Well, I could talk about the Bible all day long, but switching gears here, I'm curious to know I'd like to hear some updates on what's going on with Levi and maybe the baseball and the training and everything.
So I've started my throwing progression, just in like the weight room, off season training stuff. I'm about to finish up with a 4-week block that I've been doing just to kind of get that strength back, clean up the body, everything that was messed up with the body, just from like a positional standpoint, build that base of strength back. And then this next, I have a deload. So 1 more week and then deload. And then after that, I'll start transitioning into, trying to build some strength, progress where I was off of last year, and building up throwing wise. Arm feels good, stuff like that. And then training with Nico, also. So it's basically same stuff. About to transition out of this block into the next phase. So excited about that. 1 more hard week of training, and then I'll deload next week, and then I'll be in Arizona the following week for the first week of this new little cycle that I'm doing.
Are you going back to train at the facilities and stuff like that for baseball?
No, I'll lift at I'll lift at optimal, do my lifting stuff there, and then I'll throw with the guy at the field. And just because I like to do the lifting there, I like to kind of being on my own. I can play the music or not play any music at all. I can kind of do my own thing there. Um, as far as like atmosphere stuff that just gets my juices flowing. So I'll do my lifting stuff there, but then I'll start throwing and stuff with guys in the field.
Is that specific to you being able to lift there? Or do they have like a membership that includes lifting and as well as like the hot and cold?
Yeah, they have it's a gym first, I would
Oh,
say.
okay.
Yeah. So it's a gym first, and then I would say the recovery stuff. I don't know. It's like 50-50. It's basically like an overall like health and wellness place. And Joey's a spiritual guy too, so they do a lot of stuff um in the Native American spiritual background, which is I think super unique too. Uh, so that place is special. We're gonna have Joey on too eventually, so that'll be sweet.
We got to roll down there, Dana. I
I
was thinking
know.
of, I've been wanting to get down there. That I've been so busy with this testing and stuff for this trial, but I want to get down there. I think you'd love it. There's whenever I've been in there, I've connected with somebody for they bring in groups of Native Americans or different groups, and they have a couple groups that come in where they're in drug addiction recovery sort of thing, and hearing stories and watching these guys their lives change just from doing cold plunges, breath work. It's a whole program where instead of going to, I believe if this correctly, but it's a program where instead of going to jail, they go into this place, and they've totally turned their lives around. These guys, it's absolutely incredible to see what happened. It's just a really special place. Levi and I were in the sauna, craziest sauna I've ever been in. Just an awesome, he's burning different leaves in there and stuff, and uh there's a girl there, Serene. She came into the sauna when we were in there, just saying this beautiful Native American song when they're in there. It's just a super cool place.
Yeah, it's awesome. And for me to see those people, like it's been emotional. Like they're using the ice bath and sauna and stuff, and you'll see the trauma that they've endured over their life. The life on the reservation typically I think is a little bit rougher than normal society here in America. So they've been through some trauma for the most part, and I think that leads to the drug addiction and stuff like that. But to see them kind of break that, and you can see it, they're all tensed up like this, shoulders are to their ears, and to see them just kind of let go and let that stress out, and ooh, wow, it's been it gets emotional in there sometimes.
I think it. I think I keep going back. Sugar Sean said in a recent interview, one of the reasons he's able to get to the level he is because he for 5 years he hasn't missed a night, pretty much of going into the cold plunge within an hour before bed for 3 minutes. And when you're sitting in that cold plunge and it's getting close to go to bed, and you got to get in there. I've been trying to keep up a streak going. It's a definitely tough thing, but if you can make it through those 3 minutes, like Levi always says, that if you can make it through 3 minutes in that cold plunge, you can make it through 3 minutes of anything. 3 minutes in the ring, like getting hit and stuff. That cold plunge is definitely one of the most powerful tools I think that I utilize in my life for battling cancer or trying to optimize my health or just to have a better next day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are still using the old school cold plunge where it's like 55. You got to get that thing down. Like in order to go to a serious fight or flight mode, that thing needs to be in 30s. Like, and I think Joey and them, that thing is cold. So
Oh
you're going
yeah.
in soon as you're in there, you're into fight or flight. So it's like fight or flight for 3 minutes. So now when you're in fight or flight for a life situation, it's like I've been here before. I've regained like my breath, and I've calmed down through this fight or flight, whatever hormones being released. I've already been through that. I actually practice this regularly. So when that happens in real time in real life, it's a lot easier. And I think that's what Sean talks about is like he's able to stay calm in those big moments. He's got fans going crazy. He's this big superstar. He has all this pressure on him,
Yeah.
but he practices that staying calm in these difficult positions, and you see that come out pretty much every time he fights.
That's definitely true. You get in the cold punch at that that spot, and they bring out this huge hammer and they're breaking up chunks of ice. I I absolutely, I think the cold plunge needs to have some floating ice in it when you to be a true cold plunge.
Yeah, it gives it that like Titanic vibe.
I do like it this time of year though. Even in Arizona, it gets pretty cold. So if you got access to a pool somewhere, jumping into the pool in the morning, that's pretty solid because you get right underneath the water. You're just popping right in there. That's one of my favorite ways to get myself going in the morning is jumping into a cold pool.
Yeah, I think starting with cold, like you don't have to start with 32. Like if you want to, the elite of the elite, they're getting down there 32, 33, but you don't have to. You can start with cold showers. That's better than if that's the way you start. Okay, I've been doing cold showers for a year now. Okay, now maybe it's time I'm gonna start doing an ice bath. Okay, I've been doing an ice bath that's 50 for a year now. Okay, now we're gonna crank that thing down to 44, 43, and progress. You're constantly trying to progress. And I think it just like for me, that's translated into every aspect of my life. Like, okay, now I do 40. Okay, now I'm gonna do 32. Now I'm gonna get under there with the snorkel. Okay, my next step, I want to get under there with the straw. Now I have to control my breathing through this small, my head's under the water with a straw. I mean, that's, I can imagine how you can get more advanced. Like, it doesn't get much tougher than that.
Yeah, once you start dunking your head under and holding breath, it's kind of hard to stop doing it because you don't want to do it, but the results you get from that once you start going into those new levels are so awesome that you want to take it to that next level.
Dixon Gracie said he never timed his ice baths. He just would go
Um,
under and until he relaxed. And then once he relaxed, he would come up.
Ooh,
I
that's
thought that was interesting. So he's almost using it for pure, that's basically going in there for pure mental. Like you're only going in there to let go. And then once you let go, then you're out. I thought
yeah.
that
I've
was
been trying to
interesting.
analyze because Sugar Sean has the number one sleep score in the UFC. All the UFC fighters are required to, I think it's wearing an Aura ring or something, and have their sleep tracked and everything. And he credits the cold plunge before he goes to bed. And I noticed in my own, I wear the Whoop strap, and my sleep score versus when I do the cold plunge within an hour before bed and I don't, it's totally different. It's a huge
Yeah.
like impactful change. And I was trying to analyze why, and I think that's one reason you're forced to relax your body under kind of tough conditions. Aside from the benefits of the cold, something about the cold and it prepares your body for better sleep. You have the what's it called, the chili pad that you sleep on, and people are getting into those elements. So the body being a little bit cold on the colder end of sleep will get better quality. And how huge that is if you can find a way to, even as an athlete or wherever you are in life. I know it is true for me with everything being so on the edge in terms of having a weakened immune system a lot of times and different things I'm going through, is to be able to get my sleep up, my sleep quality. It could be the difference between life and death. It could be the difference between winning a fight and not. It could be the difference between, like in Sugar Sean's fight, taking that left hook, that crazy left hook that would have knocked out, you know, one millions and millions of people. Is one out of a billion people that could take that shot because he got a better sleep. His body was in a better trained state.
Right. I think to be at that high level, you have to be dialed in all aspects. And like just the little things on sleep, like not eating late. If you, for me, I see a crazy difference if I'm eating at 9, 10, or typically I'm asleep by 10. So if I'm eating at 9 o'clock and I'm going to bed at 9:30, my sleep is not going to be good for, I would be willing to bet money on it. And if I eat, okay, I stopped eating like nothing, I'm not intaking anything from 7 o'clock and I'm going to bed at 9, my sleep is going to be, my body's had time to digest. I think what happens is when you're sleeping, if you ate at 9 and now you're asleep at 9:30, you're for those first 2 or 3 hours of sleep, your body's still trying to digest the food. So
Yeah.
what's that going to do? It's going to elevate your heart rate because your body's working. Same thing with the higher temperatures. If it's hot and you're going to bed hot and not using the chili pad or something like that, now your body's trying to keep your body temperature low, so it's working at night. Now if it's cold in the room, your body temperature is already down. That's one less thing that your body has to be focused on. Now it can focus on repairing muscle tissue and stuff like that, producing the right hormones to to give you a better quality of sleep.
Oh, that's good. That is something that's really good there. That eating before bed, that has been a really tough component for me. And I've been working on probably in my battle in the last 10 years. It's not known there, everybody kind of hears nausea is a big thing for a cancer patient. And there's different levels of being in cancer, and there's over 200 chemotherapy drugs, and about half of the chemo drugs are derived from plants. So a lot of them are actually, I see them as healing medicines. I call it healing oil or whatever. But the reason cancer patients get a lot of nausea, if you have different levels. Again, some people are just they're in a mild chemo, and with harsher chemos, you hit a harsher chemo, which for a blood cancer patient, that's kind of cancer I have, is that it's, and setting this world record, probably 95% of them are, there's a scale of 0 to 5, where 5 is the most harsh. They've been around 4 or 5. So nausea is the thing that actually probably is the side effect that ends up killing most cancer patients, because you get into these deep layers of nausea, and there's all these different medicines you can use for anti-nausea. One blocks the vomiting receptors, so you can't vomit, but you just get into this deep level of nausea. So when your nausea gets really bad, just kind of like I do the same thing with pain, you see that your resting heart rate is affected because your body is under more stress. So if that resting heart rate gets too high and you can't eat, and your body's not getting the nutrients, next thing you know, on your feeding tube, and the body still is, you get this horrible nausea in the feeding tube, and all these elements go, and your heart just gives out. So it's become a huge battle. And you have this whole other level of nausea association. Everybody's probably experienced that thing before, where you maybe eat some chicken wings or something, and you have the flu, or you drank too much, and then you're vomiting. Well, you don't want to eat chicken wings again for a while. So chemo has that same elements, where there's a lot of mind discipline you have to have, like even wearing a certain type of sweater. When I really go through nausea, I learned real fast, like, oh man, I can't even look at that in my closet, I'm going to throw up. Or I ran into a nurse at the grocery store, and I almost threw up because she was associated with that. Even at one point, my mom, it was tough. When I wasn't sick, I'd see her, and I get nausea. So I had to kind of change up things. But with that, I wouldn't be able to eat all day. So I had to develop this thing where I'd take a lot of medicine. I'd use marijuana. That was my number one, probably go-to breakthrough for nausea, to get my appetite up. And then I'd have to eat just a lot of dense calories. Very common for a cancer patient in a big battle to eat chicken wings or a lot of oil or grease stuff, which doesn't seem like it. But, if you've been recovering from a hangover, you might, kind of understand that vibe. But so trying to get in a lot of calories to go to get in before bed, because I needed those calories to stay off the feeding tube, but I couldn't get them throughout the day. It was just such a hard thing on the body to eat. But I'm going there because of the sleep score. So I'm constantly battling different levels of nausea with these chemo drugs, or being off the nausea. And if I eat a ton of food before I go to bed, which for some reason, I think men especially, we struggle with that one. We want to, get that food in before we go to bed, because we're going to be fasting, breakfast break fast. And I noticed that, just like you said, if I eat a big meal, probably 3 or 4 hours, say I go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm up and I'm awake. And if I check my heart rate, it's up. It's up way too high. And that's because for those 3 hours, my body was like, we're nice and full. But then it's entering into that digestion process. So if you're waking up at 2 in the morning, you might want to investigate what you're eating before you go to bed. And Kai and I have been messing around with this one, my boy, and looking at the Whoop stats. And we both noticed that if we can get in a meal, which is hard with training sometimes, if we can get it, a Chef Mama Ara meal from the Recharge Center, a little plug there, we can get in one of those meals after training, a little bit earlier, 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then we go to bed 10:30. The earlier the better. But if we needed something, we found that eating a raw liver, I try to start my day with some raw meat, raw liver. I know Levi's on this too. A little bit of raw liver before bed, that seems to be the optimal food, versus, you got the protein shake, which is quickly digestible, but that seems like it messes with the blood sugar somehow. So that little bit of liver is my little hack, where I'm not waking up at 2 in the morning just like all messed up. My whole sleep score is off because I ate late.
Right. I would even do that during the season sometimes. I would prefer like games at 7, we finish up, we'll say 10 o'clock, and food gets there at 11. If I'm pitching it, if I'm scheduled to pitch the next day, I'm prioritizing sleep over those those 1,000 calories that I'm gonna get in, especially if the food's something, because in the minor leagues sometimes you're not getting top quality food, you're getting kind of middle range, a little bit unhealthy. Like most of the guys like to eat unhealthy. That's just kind of the culture of, I don't know, just baseball guys they're not eating as healthy as like MMA athletes as a whole. So sometimes I'll skip out if it's an unhealthy meal and I have to pitch the next day and the food doesn't get there until 10:30, 11. For me, I would rather prioritize my sleep rather than get these calories in. I'll get a good night's rest and I can eat, load up, because typically the game's going to be at 7 at night. So I have time to load up during the day and kind of strategically go at that. But to prioritize the sleep first, I think is the most important rather than, oh, I need these calories. Is like, I feel like we unnecessarily eat just because it's like, just like anything else. Oh, we were told we need to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 2 snacks in between, and this is the way we do it. And this is, if you're going to be an athlete, this is how you have to do it. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes you fasting or doing a little bit of a longer fast, or maybe certain days only eating 2 meals, or certain days eating 5, or certain some days you have to eat 6, 7. Um, Going at it from a strategic standpoint rather than just like a textbook. This is how I'm going to do it.
I love that. That's good. What about Dana with the being on a vegan diet? Does that, I know if you're eating more vegan, you're probably able to digest stuff a lot better. How do you handle that nighttime eating?
Honestly, dude, honestly, it's the like the biggest struggle for me just in general, vegan or not. Like eating late night is like I just love to. I don't know why, but I think more than just like the quality of the sleep that I would get, I can notice if I trained and I eat late and wake up, my body aches. Like it actually like hurts.
Yeah.
It's noticeable, you know. And so the best thing I can do, I guess, as far as just snacks that I go for, if it is late night, and kind of same thing, I always shoot to go to bed by 10:30, 11 at the latest. So I can sleep until 8 or 9, get literally 9 hours, 9.5, even just laying there. I function the best off of 9 hours of sleep. But it's like apples and bananas. That's like, fruit or something. Like apples and peanut butter, something like that. But even that, like, even if that's like an hour before bed, it's still like huge struggle. I notice it immensely when I wake up in the morning. Like, damn, I'm a little lethargic. Oh, I trained. Oh, I'm a little more sore in my legs. Like, so, um, but
Right.
yeah, it's hard, especially if you eat an edible or you puff on something and
I
you're just
identify.
like, I'm like, oh shoot, like I'm setting myself up bad, but even those things I've like strayed away from a lot, like smoking near bedtime, because I think exactly how Levi explains, like you digesting it in your body is the same thing with THC. Your body's still trying to digest these things while you're trying to sleep, and I think that totally screws up your sleep.
Yeah.
Now I know people use it to get to sleep, but yeah, I would just be mindful that like terpenes getting into your body, is gonna make you tired over time. So smoking or taking THC 3, 4 hours before bed would be ideal compared to doing these things an hour, a half hour, or even right before you go to bed. Um, because yeah, your body's gonna try and digest it while you're sleeping. You're not gonna be able to sleep properly. There's a cycle in which you sleep: light sleep, dark sleep, REM sleep. And that cycle just keeps going around. So if you miss one of those steps, or your body's trying to skip one, you're gonna wake up feeling like crap.
That's
Right. I
true. I
think
think you're onto something. Oh, go ahead, Levi. Sorry.
the least amount of things your body can be focused on like while sleeping, I think the better. That's just, I think, a good rule of thumb.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the same. Basically, I was thinking the same thing. Like I think I've had success too with fruit and peanut butter, like non less saturated fats. I think the peanut butter, the apple. I think if I do it, there's been times too. So if I do have in that nausea state and I've got to get all my calories in at the end of the day, I basically have no choice. And then I get going with the weed or whatever, like you said, I have an edible, and then I can't stop. I'm like, oh, let's see, I need something next. Let's get in more and kind of overdo it. I notice when I do come off of that, and I'm like, okay, time to calm down and eat earlier tonight. If I'm gonna use marijuana, I'll use it earlier, whatever. And then I noticed that the problem is then sometimes I wake up at 2 in the morning on the other end, like, oh man, I'm too hungry. I'm used to having this food in my body right now. And I found that usually after it takes 48 hours, it takes two nights of kind of suffering through that before I can reset my body back to being able to sleep kind of more of in a fasted state, which is ideal.
Right. That's my whole thing with like last night when we went to the wedding, I obviously didn't drink like everybody else there was drinking. But I'm like, you guys don't understand. Okay, if I drink tonight, okay, Saturday night, now I'm not gonna sleep good for Sunday. Sunday is not gonna be a great day. Now I'm gonna have to go through hell on Monday. And it's gonna be Tuesday or Wednesday before I even get back to where I should, and then there's half the week. So if you want me to drink with you tonight, okay, you come train with me on Monday, and then we'll see if you think drinking's a good idea.
That's our clip for the pod right there. That's exactly it, dude. That's how I think too. And like I've gotten far away from drinking like that for sure.
Dude, I have an issue like a I struggle like watching people do things that are bad for them and not get like mad. Like in my heart, I'm like, oh man. I was telling Taya, it's all like whatever, they can do whatever they want. But watching somebody like it's almost like putting dishwash soap in your bottle and being like, oh yeah, this is gonna make me feel good for 2 hours, and then I know it's poison, so I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? I don't get it.
Oh, that's so
but,
funny.
but I have to be better about like not letting that bother me, because like people are gonna do whatever they want. It's not who am I to say that they can't do X, Y, and Z. So just that's something I got to get better at. Just like, okay, just let them do what they want. Not everybody wants to be a freaking Superman. So if they want to have a couple beers or whatever, let them do their thing.
No, I'm
Yeah,
with
that's what I was gonna say, is that there's definitely, I think you're speaking on this, like the general population, to be honest, which is like people who go pretty hard, but
Right.
there is a lot of people who have respect and balance with those
Right.
substances.
I'm just such an extremist, like on the health stuff, that it's just how it is. Like I was telling Tay, it's like, okay, all this makeup stuff. So it's like, what for me, it's like watching somebody put on makeup that they know is going to burn their skin, and it's going to burn their skin too, and you're just watching them do it. I'm like, what the hell,
I
bro?
would say though, on the other hand, I know I so much identify with there that I would say too that you don't over coddle your body either. You're still right. You're still a fan of like you're gonna have some extra. You're gonna go crazy with the food now and then. You're gonna have a little treat now and then. Because I feel like if you don't do that, the body kind of weakens a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely nights that I'll be like, I feel like I need to eat, 2, 3 meals like right now. And I just listen to my body. I want a burger, sweet potato fries, whatever. Like I'm gonna eat it regardless. Maybe it's not the best thing for me right now, but that's what I'm craving, and maybe that's what my body needs.
Yeah, last night I went on the other end. Last night I was at a wedding. Levi was at a wedding too. Uh, Adrian and Jordan from our gym got married. So we had a lot of people from the Soul Fighters community there. It was just a fun time. There was even some rolling that went on in the suits.
Yeah.
It was good times. And we had a guy there, Brighton, that is he's going to be coming back. You'd love this guy, really good dude. And he had I didn't know he was going to be there, but they just started, him and his fiance started this year. Oh shoot, what is it? Rolling something or other. But he's got this beautiful like truck cart thing, and they do drinks in there, but neither of them drink themselves. But I got suckered in there by Chris Swag. He's such a funny dude, but he's I got suckered in and doing a tequila shot. But where I'm going with this is that people there was some awesome food there. So people are getting big plates of food and eating, and the people, come on, how come you're not eating? And I get this all the time. Usually when I go to parties and functions, I don't eat. If I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna have a little bit of drink or something like that to kind of keep me, in the right vibe. If I start to feel sick and I have a little drink and there's a little alcohol, I'm gonna go there instead of just loading up on a bunch of food. And then I watch people eat. Man, I'm sounding like a judgmental guy, but this is all good. But for me, if I would have loaded up on a plate or two of food and then had a drink, that's just a disaster. You know what I mean? Right there. That's like
You're right.
the most unhealthy thing. But it's kind of like learning. Sometimes you gotta find what works best for you. But I really feel like when you're in that situation, is trying to find something there that you can cut out and have some discipline and control over instead of just going. I watch a lot of people that's, I'm at this thing, I'm just gonna go all out. And then Monday hits, they feel like crap, and you're in this horrible cycle of trying to
Right.
break out of it. Whatever you do damage about, you're gonna have to make up for it later, is my whole principle.
Right. I think the biggest thing is knowing that it's okay to be like, no, I'm not, like, sorry, I'm not. Like, for me, that's always been a struggle. To everybody else is doing it, so I feel like I need to do it. And then, but it's almost like they're kind of poking fun at you, or the way I look at it, they're kind of poking fun at you or giving you a hard time because they can't imagine them their self being that disciplined to just be like, no, I don't need, I'm not into that, whatever. So I think also, like, having the courage to be like, sorry, like, not today,
Yeah.
it's not, I got X, Y, and Z coming up, or I'm planning for this. And then if you are going to let loose, like the way I do it, if I'm going to let loose a little bit, I'm looking for, like, okay, what's the quickest digestive? Like, what can I do, like, right after this to get this out of my system, like, as quickly as possible? Sunday, I'm waking up, like, I need to do X, Y, and Z because I did this last night. Like,
There you go.
I need to, rehydrate, get electrolytes in, like, go sweat, all these things in order to be ready to train on Monday.
The millions of viewers out there are going to wonder, Levi, what is that quickly digested horrible food you're eating?
Gosh, I was speaking more on, like, the alcohol stuff. If I'm gonna drink alcohol, I think the best thing for you is tequila. But the last time I drank was Taya's birthday, and that was in June, or yeah, July, uh, the beginning of July. So it's been a
There's
while.
something
For
about yeah.
unhealthy food, I think, what's the most unhealthy thing I've had in a while? For me to go unhealthy, I'll get like a burger. Like, I'll get a burger with pepper jack cheese, avocado, fried egg on it, and sweet potato fries. That's like a cheat meal.
Let's go.
Hey, I was gonna say discipline wise, I get really lucky being vegan because it's like I'll go to a lot of events and stuff like that, and it's like people exactly what Levi was saying, like they poke fun and da 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 da. But I can kind of flip it on its head and be like, well, not only do you not really have anything for me, and a lot of the stuff here is not very healthy, but I'm trying to be disciplined in the sense of like I have my set meals, I have these things that I think are digestible, exactly what he's saying that I think work well with my body. And I just don't see any of that here. And it's not the right time. So I'm going to say no. I've had like 4 years of practice with that now. It's been pretty hard because, like he said, like you want to be like, well, they can't imagine like you not like fitting in with the crowd and stuff like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
I get kind of lucky, like being like, hey, I don't eat meat or I don't eat dairy. And, they can poke their fun, but then also it's the discipline thing too. So I just kind of couple them together and it's easy for
Yeah.
me now.
I think just knowing, like, that goes in anything, not just that. Like, okay, this is who I am. Like, you're gonna like it or not. I don't really care. Having that mindset is like, bro, this is me, and like, I choose to do this because X, Y, and Z. And if you don't like that, cool. Like, I don't care, because
Yeah,
this is who I am, and I stand on my own 2 feet. I can do what I want. I'm a grown man.
I agree.
Kyle, I did have tequila Friday night at the show. I had two tequila pineapples, but I think they
I
only
think
put like one shot in them or something. So I wasn't even, yeah.
I think that is the healthiest drink you can have. I think.
Yeah. I had a
I had
great time, yeah.
I had one tequila. It was like this. It's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's an interesting conversation on what the healthiest drink is. Sometimes those high alcohol calories, I don't know. You get low carb calories, but if you get in those high alcohol calories versus sometimes I think some of the low calorie beers they might have, you get 18 grams of carbs or something, but you're getting some, so you don't have as many alcohol calories in there. So I kind of go back and forth on it. But the tequila is an interesting one because somebody had told me, and I looked into research that somewhere in Central America they've used for many years tequila, and then this plant, it's the Madagascar periwinkle rose, to treat blood or like serious cases of cancers, where some people get cured, or it's almost like a poison, but some people would get cured, or some people wouldn't make it. But they really found there that that was one thing sometimes that would get rid of cancer, would shrink tumors and things like that. And that particular plant is used, and it's one of the most common chemo drugs. I'm losing the name now, but um, it's it's one of the most common chemo drugs that's used. And it's really interesting that I found out is along the way is that some of the chemo bags will have actually a little bit of alcohol in them mixed in there. So you kind of wonder that, sometimes the people, they find out what works for a long time. There's something in the plant education and the whole plants, how healing that is. But the reason they use alcohol is it kind of helps the chemo process through the liver a little bit faster, so it's not sitting in there. So it's really interesting. As my doctor, who is a craft beer guy, we'd have long discussions about, well, do you think it's working better? Does it? So we started experimenting to have labs, and I'd be in the hospital, and so he'd bring me in some beer, and I'd drink the beer with the chemo and things like that, and we'd see how the labs were, and so it's like there's purpose, even, and I think you might be onto something with that tequila, is that it's used in a lot of cultures for different remedies.
Right. And I think like you get some of these things in the right hands and with the right intentions behind it, they can definitely be a beneficial thing. But typically I don't think that's the case when people are getting
No,
after it.
no, I don't think it's the case either.
Yeah, the other story on tequilas, I think it was a ways back, but I think it was one of the, no, it wasn't last, I was at a wedding, and I got into some tequila shots, because you got a lot of times at weddings, a tough one because the bar is open. And the story was I woke up the next morning with the sun coming up out in the woods, and a spider was crawling on me. So the tequila is a danger zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
So
else we got?
well, I'll give a little quick update on me. I'm kind of excited right now because it's been 10, 11, coming up on 11 years of treatment and battling cancer now. Is that I got into the Mayo Clinic, which is a really tough hospital to get into. It's known as one of the best research and on the latest for cancer, the latest trials and the latest medicines come through, and they're a very professional hospital. Like you go in there and the doctors are in suits, and it's a lot more formal than other hospitals, which to me, sometimes I kind of veered away from it if I was doing something like a bone marrow transplant. But in the case of like, really, this is a point in my life where I really need, the latest breakthrough and something to just be really people to be funneled in on my treatments. And so it's been nice that I was referred there. I've been dropped in the last couple of years by a couple different hospitals because I really felt when it boiled down to it, at the last hospital, they were over treating me. A lot of hospitals now are regulated so heavily by insurance. Joe Rogan had a guy on there about 10 episodes ago. I keep forgetting his name, but he was just one of the best I've heard on the health insurance, which I'm constantly been battling the health insurance. It's like almost like some weeks it's a full-time job where I'm on the phone with them all the time. Now my doctors have to get peer-to-peer meetings with other doctors to basically convince them that I need, treatment or scans and things like that. So the last hospital that dropped me from treatment is because they wanted to continue giving me this pretty harsh chemo. A lot of the insurance coverage and a lot of the doctors, they err on the end of trying to get rid of the cancer first. They just want to get rid of the cancer. If the patient gets hurt by the chemo, oh well, sort of thing. So I could kind of feel in my body at this last hospital that they were good and everything, but doctor was solid that if I did a couple more cycles, I was going to be in big trouble. So they dropped me, and I was looking for a doctor. And I remember this doctor who came into my room about 9 years ago really stood out to me as a guy that was just the most positive doctor I'd been around, just super caring, asked me a lot of questions. I remembered who he was, looked him up. He ended up taking me on, which is a big deal right now. It was just very, very kind of him to take my case on because, on paper, I'm a losing case for a doctor and a lot of extra work with insurance. So he took me on, and he ended up referring me to a close friend who happens to be the #1 lymphoma specialist in the world, who knows all about my case. I was with Mayo before. So they agreed to take me on and got me, fast tracked me into a trial of a new class of drugs that's been developed. There's been a tremendous breakthrough. If you know anybody that's dealing with cancer, or you can give them one way you can give them a word of encouragement is that every term, every 4 months, there is a huge breakthrough in the cancer world, where even 2 years ago in our groups, versus 2 years, the death rate in our group, which is tough to deal with in these cancer groups, has dropped. Every 4 months, it'll drop. So we've seen breakthroughs every 4 months in treatment. This class of drugs is the first time in 6 years I'm a terminal cancer patient, which means there's no known cure. This is actually a chance where we can get remission here. There's been a couple of other blood cancer patients who are earlier in their treatment post bone marrow transplant, that have had some really good results, have gotten remission, have gotten energy back and things like that. So we're in our testing phase for this trial right now, where a lot of labs, we do things like little surgeries, we're getting lymph node taken out and tested on. I've got about 50 active tumors in my body. One of the qualifiers, we've qualified on everything. The last qualifier that we need is we have to have one tumor at least 2.5 centimeters. In our last scan about 7 weeks ago, we had a tumor right at 2.5 centimeters. So we're kind of like, all right, we got to get this one when they're, and I don't know if it's, somebody asked if it's 2.42, do you think they'll cut you out? I don't think so. I think they'll still work with it. But it is a time where it's so different, and that I'm very chemo responsive, which has helped me, and that we would usually treat the cancer. So I tell people this a lot, the cancer side effects are way harder to deal with if you have a aggressive cancer, if you're dealing with a blood cancer and long-term cancer that's a long battle. The cancer effects are rough to deal with. For chemo effects are going to be like nausea, neuropathy, which shocks going on your spine and pain in your feet, dizziness, loss of appetite, things like that. Whereas the cancer effects are going to be pain at the tumor sites. And it's this, cancer patients have been through a big battle. They'll tell you that there's a cancer fatigue, but it's a different type of exhaustion and a different type of fatigue. And so I'm getting, and there's inflammation in the body. So if I exercise right now, my immune system is battling this cancer attack. My muscles are being attacked on right now. So I'm in the state right now where this week, where it was starting to get miserable, where I think at our gym, we have so many people, and you guys are some of my biggest support there. Paul from our gym just said, man, what's going on? I'm kind of worried about you, man. I haven't seen you at practice. And in probably 2.5 years since I've been there, I don't think I've missed a full week of practice. And I did in the week before last. And where it just got to the point where Wednesday or Thursday, where I was like, I'm not going to make it. If I don't get chemo treatment soon, I'm not going to make it to the end of the month when we would start the trial. So, this is now so I was dreaming, and I dreamed that I had a stash of chemo somewhere hidden, kind of a light chemo. And I got Ara here, who was had been a caretaker and kind of a nurse, little sort of in a way, in the Philippines. And I was dreaming that she kind of helped me out with this little chemo. And we took that chemo and woke up the next morning, went through something overnight, and woke up the next morning, and I felt tremendously better. Now, the hope is that we didn't knock too much cancer out there in that dream, but
wow,
feeling so much better. I was able to go back the next day. I went back to jujitsu. And one of the problems I've had is I've had over 20 cases of pneumonia. One of them is PCP pneumonia, which is the #1 pneumonia killer. I had that 9 years ago, almost took me out. I was on a bed of ice for a couple of weeks in Mayo Hospital. And the pneumonias, when I get a virus and my immune system is weakened through cancer, the virus doesn't go away until I get a chemo treatment. It's where I get a chemo, my body feels so much better in a lot of ways, and even knocks out viruses for me. So I've been battling this virus, different viruses in my body for about 3 months. And if I don't stay on top of it with those principles that we talk about on here, it'll turn into pneumonia just like that. Got a couple tumors on the lungs. So training was getting really difficult. The room was spinning. I was operating under like 88 SpO2 oxygen levels and things like that. But when I went back there on Thursday, man, I wasn't all the way there, but the level of, when you've been sick or something, it's lifted off, you feel so much better. And so I'm really grateful, because I was even wondering, I was like, man, can I do we got our next podcast. I don't know about that, but we're going to do a bone marrow biopsy where they take a little piece of a bone out. It's known as one of the most painful procedures you go through. Cancer patients know about that. We talk BMBs. We talk about it a lot. Going through that Monday, which I'm kind of used to. I'm going to try it out without sedation and see if I can record myself to see if I can stay quiet on this one. It's only a minute thing, but it's this, the actual pulling of the bone. They go in there and they pull a bone out. But man, it is a crazy pain that you can't really explain. But then we're going to do a scan Tuesday. That's when we need 2.5 centimeters. So send your good vibes and prayers our way.
Wow.
We hope that this is good. And we got some more testing throughout the week. Like I do this nuclear heart test. I still don't know much about it, but it's supposed to be the most extensive test on the heart. I have a couple heart conditions going on. Injection fraction is below 20, which a lot of people end up getting started. There's different things going on with heart. So we're going to test that very thoroughly. And I feel pretty good about it because I don't think I'd be able to train with Levi picking me up and slamming me into the ground, the nicest possible way, even at his 50%. I don't think I'd be able to manage that if I had some serious heart problems. So I feel pretty good about it. And then we're going to get into by Friday. I think we go through a whole week of testing, and then we're going to jump into that. I think just after Thanksgiving, we'll hit that trial. So pretty excited about it. So that's the latest.
Wow, that's crazy. It's crazy that you had the dream too, and then you felt better. That's wild. Joey would be going crazy. So, and the surgery that they're going to do, they're taking out a piece of a bone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they test that bone because cancer can only happen with blood cancers. It's kind of complex, but there's bone marrow and then there's bone, and it's a little bit different. Stem cells are in the bone marrow, but they take out a little piece of bone because the cancer can hide out in the bones. So this last week I was at the hospital every day because they ask you a lot of extensive questions. I went through my whole history. It asked me tons of questions. I had a really good research doc there at Mayo Clinic that built up a good relationship with, and they want to be able to measure these things. Where am I now? So they take out that piece of bone so they can kind of see it now versus later to get an idea. Is there cancer there? What's going on in his bone? They break it down, run all sorts of tests on it.
Is there a benefit to doing it awake, or you just
actually the benefit for me is that I get it's another job. It's a full-time. The cancer battle is kind of a 24/7 job on one end, and some days I get breaks and things, and it's like this. I'll have some weeks or times where I can train a lot and it's not getting at me as much, and other times where and sometimes little things. But right now I'm so tired of being at the hospital. If I take the twilight meds or whatever, sedation for it, I'm gonna have to be at the hospital 6 to 8 hours. If I don't do it, I'm probably out of there in 60 to 90 minutes.
Oh wow. So you're just gonna try to grind through and just have them. That's crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy, bro. But
that's when the ice bath's gonna come in. Like you do the ice bath for 3 minutes. That's a freaking ice bath right there. The hardest ice bath there is for 1 minute straight. That would be my mindset going in.
Man, I'm gonna be thinking that.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's wild. Well, we'll be praying for you for sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Man, I'm just so grateful. It's amazing when you go through trials in your life. It's like, oh, I want this gone, and I don't understand. And sometimes I throw out the question why, and sometimes you get stuck in that why too long. It's there, but man, the person that I was talking to, Chris Swag. I'd love to have this guy. Chris Swag is a guy. He's just how would you describe him, Dana? Chris.
He's just a natural. He's one of those people who's just a natural comedian, and that he can he's a chameleon. He can fit in with everybody and anybody, and just kind of make him feel good.
He reminds me of what's the guy's name? Alan off The Hangover. He reminds me of him. He's like a little one of him.
He'll come in and train jiu-jitsu, and he's a scrappy dude and stuff, and he's been an awesome friend.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
2 years. We're all rooting for him. We want him to train more. I think we all have a little bit of Christmas, but man, I noticed a lot of gifted people like him. He's so witty and so quick with the comedy and so charismatic. they almost struggle also with the other side of some depression and things like that. And he was kind of reaching out to me last night that, man, I need to get better. I'm, not doing good and stuff. And then I was thinking myself, like, where was I at his age? And I was like, man, you know what, bud, you're doing maybe in a lot of ways better than I was at that age. And then
Right.
went on this thing kind of connecting in the humor thing. I was like, man, you know what? Things could turn around for you. You could get cancer and become the amazing person I am today. So there's hope for everybody. You might get cancer and be no, but it's for me, it's been I'd rather not have cancer anymore, but it's been this thing where I probably wouldn't be on this show right now with you guys doing this. I may have never trained jujitsu or really understood fighting the way that I do right now without it. So sometimes those things you don't want, the weight on your back that you can't get off, and you're asking why, there's something good that can grow out of them. And I think that's the way God operates. There's so many story after story in the Bible of the worst thing and how God loves to work and grow and show the most beautiful garden out of those things for some reason.
Right, for sure. When I was going through the stuff with my shoulder, I almost got like excited that I was going through these things because I knew what was going to bloom. Like I had, okay, this is the flower that's going to bloom out of this. Yeah, right now I'm in the mud of it, but just to watch this kind of unfold and see the flower that blooms, and maybe it's not exactly what I thought was going to happen, X, Y, and Z. If you would ask me 3 years ago, I'd have thought, oh, I'm already in the big leagues, killing it, probably rookie of the year, like, and never would have expected what happened to happen. But I wouldn't go back and change it for the world because of what, the person that's made me. It's like it really, the whole journey of it showed me like who I am. Okay. And now the person I am today compared to 2 years ago, it was like, okay, this is who I am right here. You know, I'm not going to change for anyone. Like, I'm going to try to continually progress. But through these past 2 years, going through all these hard times, and so going from the top prospect in the organization to like a guy that's just, all these coaches were telling me, oh, you're the next thing, next thing, to those coaches being like, what the hell's going on? We don't know what's going on with him, but he's throwing the ball all over the place. Little did they know that I had thoracic outlet. But
Yeah.
that flip of going through that, it's like, okay, this is who I am. Like I'm the same stuff I was doing when I was successful, and you guys were telling me I was Cy Young or whatever. It's the same stuff that I'm doing now, and now you're bashing it because I'm not performing. It's like you really learn who you are in those dark times. And so now when I go through struggles and stuff like that, it's like I can't wait to see what comes out of this, because going back to last trials that I've been through, it got me to here. So continually having that perspective was like, yeah, this is hard right now, but something great's going to come out of this. I think to have that perspective is important.
I feel really bad sometimes for the people that aren't, there's people that just don't like exercise. I think we're all guys that were kind of exercise nerds, and I just love exercise. I think of Levi, he had the recovery from surgery, and I never heard him once complain or say this is a tough thing. He was more like, he's almost like he was excited, like, oh, I get to study this and see what happens. I'm going to analyze
Right.
what exercise works. And that's kind of like, it's kind of like a benefit. That's why I think exercise is so important. You don't have to go be all crazy about it. Like, you think of a mechanic who was just kind of born that. We meet these guys that are just wizards at, mechanics, being a car mechanic, and they've loved it since an early age. And hey, man, if your car breaks down, whoa, this is all right. I got to work on my car and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. And it's and I might, it's like I'm a guy who I wish I knew more about cars. A car breaks down, and I don't want to. Then I'm like, oh man, I need to learn. So try to learn a little bit more. But that's why it's good to be prepared. It's our body. To me, it's the most important thing. Exercise is the best investment you can make in your future, more than monetary value or anything. If you can invest a little bit in knowing, a little bit about exercise when your body does break down and you go through something, I know what to do. Here's an opportunity for me to repair this situation.
Right. For me, it's so interesting. I can get on like 2 hour tangents on just the ankle or the rib cage or the spine or all these parts of the body. So to me, I look like just like a car. I was thinking about this the other day. There was a truck at jujitsu and it had been smashed. The bed had been smashed by a tree, so it was caved in. And I thought, okay, that's probably in my head of health and wellness. I'm like, that's gonna cause problems like up the chain in the truck. Like that truck's probably just thinking like relating it to like a body, like, oh, your ankle's messed up. And now that's causing problems up the chain. Like that might show up in your shoulder, that might show up in your neck, that might show up who knows where. Like that usually the problem isn't exactly what hurts or something like that. Like, oh, my knee's hurting. Well, the problem, it could be my knee, but maybe it's my ankle or my toes, or just thinking like it that I almost look at everything that way now. It's kind of wild.
Man, we that's why I love this podcast so much, man. I just there's this I feel like exercise and all this kind of stuff we're talking about, I don't know how many people we're gonna have end up listening to it, but I do believe that this is going somewhere big, and I'm excited about what's ahead. I think this kind of discussion, for whether it's just a community or tap into this guy from Canada, I'd love to get him connect with our podcast too a little bit, come on and visit. He's
Oh yeah.
he's such an interesting guy, because you think of Joe Rogan, and there's almost like this new exciting movement going on in Austin that Rogan almost kind of is a pioneer. He's almost a leader of that movement, of where he's a jiu-jitsu UFC guy, he's into comedy, podcasting, and he's into optimizing health and the power of the podcast. Like this Nick guy, he's in an element in Alberta, and the same thing. He's into jiu-jitsu, UFC, really big UFC fan, into the comedy, he's a stand-up comedian, and he's into optimizing health. And the we were talking about the power of the podcast, is that you hear Rogan reflect why the podcast is so awesome, is that you get to learn who somebody really is in a podcast. When you're in there and you're talking for a while, the truth really comes out. And if you're interested in what they're interested in, and you ask questions about what they're passionate about, you're going to learn something from every person that you hear that comes on to Rogan. There's something new that you can learn from that person, no matter how difficult. Dr. Phil was on there, and there's something you can take away.
Died. Hold on. 1 second.
I watched that Dr. Phil one, Kyle. That was good.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear you.
sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. My headphones died.
No, you're good.
I meant some of the, Dana was asking some of the feedback we were getting. Some of it has been, on the other hand, people are trying to understand what we're doing here, particularly in the older generation, or maybe people haven't been on podcasts. We've all been around podcasts, right? I through a whole course of my treatment, I got on podcasts, and I recommended anybody who's going through a health problem is you just get the little earbud, noise canceling earbud, because a lot of times noise is tough when you're sick. And I just started listening to podcasts, and Chael Sonnen is one of the first podcasts I listened to on a regular basis. I think I got into him from the very, very beginning a few years back. Absolutely love his podcast. He's from Oregon, where I grew up, and one of my favorite characters of all time. He has fun with the sport and everything. He's got a thread of Sugar Sean has a thread of what he did, like kind of in Conor McGregor, and he would talk a lot about in his first episode run of a couple years of his podcast about why he did the cold plunge, about how it made the rest of the day easier, wrestling, about the discipline that was involved in coming up as a wrestler. Now it shows a lot more on MMA, but that podcast really impacted my life. I don't know if I would have gone into jiu-jitsu, or I would have cold plunged, if it hadn't been for listening to that podcast. So I'm really excited about this movement going on, where I have my boys. My brother had sent something about Jim Carrey's the best comedian ever. My boys like, who the heck is that? I never heard of that guy. So I took him through showing some clips of Jim Carrey, and he was on Jay Leno TV talk show, who I think everybody knows. You guys know Jay Leno. He's, who that is, and as in a thread of how it was Johnny Carson, how TV was in some of the most popular TV. Is a kind of a funny guy, talk show host, and you get to know the guest on there, and they do little skits. Well, Jim Carrey is on there, and I recall that as being the most epic things I've ever seen on television. The boys watch it, and they're like, Dad, this sucks. This isn't that good. I was like, oh no. And I really started asking him questions, and it got to things have changed a lot. And then, that always happens, but with podcasts are what TV used to be. TV is out now. What we're doing right here is, for people that are just tapping in for the first time, you got to switch gears here a little bit. It's kind of like when radio went to TV. There's radio, TV, and now we got podcasting, and that's how I feel about it.
Right.
I love it.
To me, it's like you're learning too. I mean, some of them it's just comedy or whatever, but for me, most of the time it's like I'm listening to a textbook, like the modern day textbook, especially when I'm listening to somebody that I admire, or somebody I look up to or value, what they're saying. I think they're educated on whatever they're talking about. It's like I'm listening to a textbook role right now.
I love that. That's so good. Well, now that we've exhausted everybody's ears and fired you up on podcasts, I can't wait for the next episodes. I know we got some exciting guests lined up ahead. You guys got anything else for the day?
I'm good. How long was that?
Started right at 2, so we're coming up on 2 hours.
Fire. All right, Kyle, do you want to wrap it up? You want to close it out?
Well, everybody, thanks so much for watching episode 4 of Untapped. We can't wait for what's next. Let us know your feedback, other podcasts you're listening to, some ideas about what you want to hear, what you want to see, some guests ahead. Love you guys. Have a best week ever.
Yeah, it's dark now. We started when it was daytime. Dark.
Peace.